Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now this is the AMD Radeon RX 9070, more specifically it's the ASUS TUF OC version. I'd like to thank ASUS for sending this over and I'll have a more comprehensive benchmark video soon, but for now it's time to do something silly. If you're lucky enough to be able to find one of these in stock and at a reasonable price, then chances are you're going to be gaming at 1440p or 4K, maybe with the help of FSR. Speaking of which, the new Radeon RX 9000 cards support AMD's latest iteration of the upscaling tech, FSR 4, and from what I've tested so far, it looks fantastic. Even compared to FSR 3.1, there are some noticeable differences. There are a small selection of FSR 4 supported titles thus far as listed on the AMD site, and enabling it for said games is done by opening the AMD software, selecting the gaming tab, choosing a compatible game, and enabling the Fidelity FX Super Resolution 4 toggle. We'll use The Last of Us Part 1 as an example to start with. When starting the game, a pop-up will appear stating that FSR 4 is available. Hitting Alt-Z on the keyboard will bring up the overlay, and here we can see the FSR 4 status, which will only say active when we turn on FSR 3.1 from the in-game menu. Some games may have a separate FSR 4 option, but here 3.1 becomes 4, to put it simply, when we enable 3.1 and then choose a preset. For example, we'll go into the graphics menu and choose quality mode. Hitting Alt-Z again will verify that FSR 4 is working. This is my first time testing it, so I was quite paranoid that it wasn't actually working and ended up hitting Alt-Z a third time to verify it was enabled in-game. Here I'm running in 1440p mode with FSR 4 quality at the ultra settings. As a quick side note, it's pretty cool to see the 9070 boosting past 3 GHz. The temperatures of this model are pretty impressive too. It's probably quite difficult to pick up any differences between FSR versions in a highly compressed video, but here is a quick side-by-side at 1440p Ultra with FSR 3.1 quality and FSR 4 quality. A couple of things I noticed was better clarity with grass and foliage, as well as less flickering on the church roof in the background. In this side-by-side I noticed that the flickering on the box by the railing was gone with FSR 4 enabled, and again the clarity of some of the background objects looked to be improved. I then enabled Ultra Performance mode on my 1440p display, rendering internally at 480p, and safe to say such a low resolution has never looked so good. At this res, I did start to notice some flickering and blur around fences and barbed wire, which was also the case with DLSS 4 when we tested that. Fences, wiring and other relatively intricate objects often suffer the most at the hands of upscaling, and that can be said here too, but overall I think this is quite impressive. But let's take it down a notch. I've turned the native output down to 1920 by 1080 and kept Ultra Performance mode enabled. As I mentioned before, the game will still say FSR 3.1, but FSR 4 is enabled from within the Radeon software. As you can see, our rendered resolution is 640 by 360. Now I don't know about you, but I'm very impressed with the visuals, so much so that I'm not actually convinced I enabled it correctly. Toggling FSR off did see a sudden spike in FPS numbers, so it must be on, but I was expecting a much blurrier image overall. I said it before, you probably won't need to run at 360p internally on a card like the 970, not for a good few years, but it's certainly fun to mess around with. Here's a quick side-by-side. At 1080p with 360p internally. On the left we have FSR 4 with Ultra Performance, and on the right 3.1 with Ultra Performance. The overhead telephone wires are more visible and actually look like a solid single object. Image clarity is also noticeably clearer overall. Spider-Man 2 up next, and this one will actually have an FSR 4 option appear in the game's launcher or from the in-game settings tab after enabling it in the Radeon software. If not, it'll still say FSR 3.1. Now I haven't focused too much on performance numbers because I was more interested in image quality, and in some scenes frame rate doesn't increase all that much. Because at 1080p, especially with upscaling enabled, there will be times that we find ourselves CPU limited, even with the i9 14900K that I'm testing with. Again though, just like with The Last of Us, the image quality is excellent considering the low internal res. I took a few side-by-side screenshots this time too with FSR4 native, FSR4 Ultra Performance and FSR 3.1 Ultra Performance side by side. I've zoomed in to highlight the noticeable changes. With FSR4 there's less shimmer around Spider-Man himself, which is particularly noticeable in motion and when turning the camera. You may also be able to see the improved clarity with distant objects like the boats in the water. FSR4 native is the clearest as expected, and while 3.1 still looks pretty decent, 4 is clearly an improvement. It's a shame it's only available with these latest cards, but hopefully we'll start to see a wider range of GPUs in the 9000 series lineup that support this tech and cater to a wider range of price points. Image quality here looks a bit better than forced DLSS 4 on my RTX 4060 as well, especially when it comes to trees and grass. The fact upscaling is on becomes more noticeable in scenes like this where individual tree tops, leaves and branches aren't quite as easily distinguishable from each other as they will be at native res. The water in places looks a bit pixelated too, and the airstream, whatever you call it, behind Spider-Man when using the wingsuit turns into a bit of a blurry mess. All in all though, it's a solid presentation. Just like I said with my DLSS 4 video, I like this tech but I don't want to see it used in place of optimization, even though that does seem to be the case for some games already. We'll finalise then with Call of Duty Black Ops 6. FSR 4 doesn't seem to work in single player mode with no option to enable it appearing in the game's menu, but in multiplayer mode it does. I have the Game Pass version. Now interestingly, I also have the Game Pass version of Stalker 2, which should also support FSR 4, but the Radeon software didn't give me the option to enable it, maybe after an update or two, eh? Anyway, Black Ops 6 also has an ultra performance mode, so 640 by 360, upscaled to 1080p once again. It's the usual story visually, with barbed wire and fences suffering the most at the hands of upscaling, but aside from that, it's a very clear and respectable presentation overall. I'm messing around in a private match with bots because I didn't want to be running around admiring the image quality and quickly becoming a hindrance to any real teammates. I had no idea firing range was in this game, by the way. It was one of my favourite maps from the original Black Ops. It's probably been available for ages, hasn't it? And I've just noticed. Again, there's no need to experience this game at upscaled 360p, but if you do, for whatever reason, then rest assured it doesn't look too bad at all. It's actually a lot better than I was anticipating, and compared to FSR 3.1, especially at lower resolutions like this, well, you're going to notice some pretty big changes. I'd like to see FSR 4 become available for more cards, and older ones if it's even possible, because while 3.1 is decent in my opinion, this is noticeably better as far as quality is concerned. Performance wasn't really the focus of this video, but it seems to have a little more of an impact than 3.1, at least from the games we've tested today. All in all, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one. I'll be hanging on to this, hopefully, and testing more FSR 4 compatible games as and when they appear or get the necessary updates. Thanks again, and I'll see you all next time.